Grace was always a star at work. With her sharp tongue, warm smile, and quick thinking, she climbed the ladder of Crestwood marketing in record time. But with success came adversity, especially from her female coworkers. The break room gossiping started. She thinks she's better than everyone else. Why is she always noticed? Grace tried to wave it off initially. She told herself that jealousy was just something that existed and focused on performing her work as best as she could. But as time went on, the tension was becoming harder and harder to avoid. And even one coworker stole credit for an idea she'd introduced weeks earlier. It stung. Badly. One evening, following yet another arduous day of receiving passive-aggressive remarks, Grace was parked in her car, weeping, tears flowing profusely from her face. She felt used, exhausted, and had no idea what to do. She brushed at the tears in front of her as she thought of something her grandmother had always repeated. God gives you enemies, so you can learn to be his hands and feet. The words lingered in her mind. Was it a time to be kind? To reflect the love of God, even though it hadn't been deserved? She was determined to try it. Grace began to notice her coworkers, not as competition, but as people. She noticed small things they hadn't before. Sarah, who spoke most harshly to her, was perpetually exhausted and tight. Rachel, who avoided eye contact, worked early shifts just to get out for the evening pickups. And Lisa, who had stolen her idea, had circles under her eyes and never smiled anymore. Inquisitive, Grace began small. One day, after Sarah had left her lunch on the counter in her haste, Grace suggested they share. "You could do with this more than I will," she suggested gently. Sarah demurred, but took the sandwich and mumbled softly, "Thank you." Again, a week later, after Rachel complained about juggling her job and the kids, Grace volunteered to give her a spot in a meeting so she would be able to leave early. "We've all got fights," Grace indicated matter-of-factly. Then Lisa arrived. One day, Grace discovered her sobbing in the supply closet. With some gentle questioning, Lisa admitted her husband had lost his job a few weeks prior, and they were buried in bills and worry. Grace heard her out and offered information about financial counseling services she'd looked up on the internet. Gradually, the cold walls that separated them dissolved, replaced by cautious friendships. Gratitude displaced resentment, and collaboration displaced rivalry. Her colleagues began to speak up for her in meetings and add her to team projects. They even apologized to her for the way they treated her before. Along the way, Grace realized something authentic. Forgiveness was not so much about letting go of resentment. It was about becoming a channel of healing. By opting for compassion over vengeance, she became a source of power not only for herself, but for everyone in her orbit. When she turned back from the journey, Grace mouthed a prayer of thanksgiving. God had instructed her in patience, humility, and love through her suffering. And by forgiving her enemies, she learned what truly meant to be blessed, to be kind where little or no kindness was shown to her, and to throw light into dark corners.